There are moments in history when a single life seems to bend the fate of nations, when one man's ambition outgrows the world around him. The story of Napoleon Bonaparte begins on a small, windswept island in the Mediterranean, a place of rebellion, pride, and ancient heritage, Corsica. Born in 1769, Napoleon entered a world that refused to kneel quietly. Corsica had spent centuries defying foreign rule. Once controlled by the Republic of Genoa, it constantly rebelled under the leadership of its fiery patriot, Pascal Paoli. Between 1755 and 1769, Paoli's Corsican Republic stood as a rare experiment in independence, a flicker of liberty soon extinguished when Genoa sold its claim to France. With the stroke of a pen, the island was handed over to Paris, and the Corsicans found themselves under the rule of a new master. But Corsica was no blank slate. Its soul was Italian, its language, its customs, its Catholic faith, all tied to nearby Tuscany. Young Napoleon grew up hearing the sound of Italian dialects, surrounded by the traditions of an island caught between worlds. This dual identity, half Italian dreamer, half French soldier, would shape everything he became. The Bonapartes were of minor nobility, claiming Tuscan ancestry. They had little wealth, but they had pride, and pride on Corsica was worth more than gold. His mother, Letizia, was fierce and disciplined. His father, Carlo, saw opportunity in aligning with France and secured his son a scholarship to mainland military academies. And so, at just 9 years old, Napoleon left his island behind, sailing north to begin his education among the sons of France's elite. He never forgot where he came from, but he learned quickly how to adapt. At the École Militaire in Paris, he mastered the art of war and the science of ambition. His name, Buonaparte, became Bonaparte, the U quietly removed to sound more French. It was more than a change of spelling, it was a rebirth. The islander had become a soldier of the Republic. Then came the storm of revolution. France erupted in 1789, and amid the chaos, opportunity awaited the bold. Napoleon was only 24 when he first tasted glory at the siege of Toulon in 1793. As artillery commander, he orchestrated a brilliant assault that forced British forces to abandon the port. The victory caught the eye of the revolutionary leaders in Paris. They saw in him a rare combination of intellect and audacity. 3 years later, he was given command of the French army of Italy, a ragged, underfed force that he transformed into a weapon of legend. Between 1796 and 1797, his lightning campaigns smashed Austrian armies, liberated northern Italy, and spread the ideals of revolution across the Alps. He moved with speed and precision no general of his time could match. To his soldiers, he was not just a commander, he was destiny made flesh. By 1799, Napoleon seized power in Paris, becoming first consul. 5 years later, he crowned himself Emperor of the French, standing in Notre Dame Cathedral with the Pope as witness, but refusing to kneel. For nearly a decade, he ruled over the most powerful empire Europe had seen since Rome. Yet, like all conquerors, he would be undone not by his enemies, but by his own boundless ambition. The Peninsular War drained his strength. The invasion of Russia in 1812, one of the greatest military gambles in history, ended in disaster. His empire began to crumble under its own weight. Defeated at Leipzig in 1813, Napoleon was exiled to Elba. But the world had not seen the last of him. He escaped, returned to France, and for 100 furious days reclaimed his throne before meeting his final reckoning at Waterloo. From there, the man who once commanded Europe's destiny was shipped across the seas to St. Helena, a lonely island where the emperor became a prisoner of memory. He died there in 1821, his dreams of empire fading into legend. Yet legends have a strange way of outliving defeat. It was 1791. France had conquered the island, and the fires of revolution had spread even to its shores. The Corsican identity Napoleon once held dear was under siege. The tricolor flag flew above towns that once swore only by Paoli's name. To many Corsicans, the Bonaparte family were traitors, people who had abandoned their roots for French favor. For Napoleon, the rejection cut deep. He had dreamed of leading Corsica's revival, but now he was treated as an outcast. That wound never fully healed, and it became the spark that ignited his lifelong hunger for greatness. He turned his gaze to Italy, to the cradle of empires and the stage of history's giants. Scipio Africanus, Julius Caesar, Augustus, Machiavelli, Francesco Sforza, Lorenzo the Magnificent all became mirrors of the destiny he sought. He believed that Italy, long divided and ruled by foreign powers, could be reborn, free, united, whole. And on the battlefields of northern Italy, he made that dream feel real. His victories were not just military triumphs, they were messages. At Lodi, Arcole, and Rivoli, he shattered Austrian power and inspired a generation of Italians who saw in him a liberator, not a conqueror. The Cisalpine Republic, which he established in 1797, became the foundation of a new political vision, an Italy governed by Italians, not by Vienna or Paris. But in Paris, the Directory grew uneasy. Napoleon's popularity was rising too quickly. The Treaty of Campo Formio, signed that same year, gave Venice to Austria and placed Napoleon in charge of Italy's administration. It was meant as a soft exile to keep him far from power. They underestimated him. Napoleon didn't see Italy as a cage, he saw it as a canvas. Free from Paris's oversight, he poured his energy into reshaping northern Italy into a model of progress. He introduced laws based on equality before the law, ended feudal privileges, and launched public works in cities like Milan and Bologna, sewer systems, roads, schools. He also understood something the French radicals had missed, that revolutions die when they turn on faith. So Napoleon sought peace with the church. He protected Catholic traditions, won over local clergy, and earned the trust of the peasantry. His reforms inspired loyalty rather than fear. And then, as if guided by fate, he began to build an army of his own, an army not merely French, but Italian. 30,000 strong, disciplined, and proud, the army of the Po would become the sword of his vision. Paris grew suspicious, Vienna trembled. And in January 1798, Napoleon made his move. He ordered a bold offensive, taking advantage of Italy's fractured states. His generals, among them the daring Louis-Charles-Antoine de Sac, crossed the Po River with breathtaking speed, capturing Turin in a matter of days. The House of Savoy, weakened by years of intrigue, fled to Sardinia. Their defenses crumbled before Napoleon's relentless advance. Next, he turned his gaze southward to Rome. With the army of the Po behind him, he entered the Papal States. But this time, he did something no conqueror had dared to do before. He refused to loot the Eternal City. He protected its treasures. He spared its art. He met the Pope not as an invader, but as a statesman. To a people weary of exploitation, this was something entirely new. Napoleon presented himself as a liberator, contrasting his conduct with centuries of Habsburg greed. Though he seized limited church wealth to fund his republic, he preserved Rome's dignity and won the cautious support of those who had once feared him. In the north, his forces reorganized parts of the Swiss Confederation into allied Italian territories. Liguria soon joined them, and on March 22, 1798, in Milan, the green, white, and red tricolor was raised for the first time. The Republic of Italy was born. Its creation defied both Paris and Vienna. It was more than a new government, it was a declaration of belief that Italy's destiny would no longer be dictated by foreign rulers, but by Italians themselves. And at the center of that vision stood one man, Napoleon Bonaparte, the Corsican who dreamed of empire. By the summer of 1798, Napoleon's vision was no longer confined to the Alps. He had turned his eyes toward the sea, the ancient highway of empire. In the harbors of Liguria and Tuscany, a Franco-Italian fleet began to take shape, an armada meant to dominate the Mediterranean and secure Italy's shores against her enemies. Its first strikes fell upon Sardinia. Napoleon's forces besieged the island's key ports, hammering Cagliari, while British warships offered desperate support to Bourbon loyalists clinging to their last stronghold. But the Mediterranean campaign soon widened beyond the horizon. Egypt, ancient, mysterious, and strategically vital, became his next theater. Landing at Alexandria, Napoleon swept through the desert, defeating the Mamluks at the Battle of the Pyramids and scattering Ottoman resistance like sand in the wind. His victories electrified Europe, but destiny called him elsewhere. he left General Louis-Charles-Antoine de Sac, known here simply as Duck, to govern Egypt. Duck's fair rule earned him the nickname the Just Sultan, for even in conquest he was measured, balancing power with mercy. By late 1798, Napoleon was back in Italy.
The storm of the Second Coalition was gathering. Austria and Russia, led by Suvorov and Melas, massed their armies in the north. From the south, Naples marched under King Ferdinand's banner, hoping to reclaim lost honor. Italy was about to become the crucible of Europe once more. In March 1799, the war erupted. Milan became the stage for its first great clash. Napoleon's army of the Po, seasoned, disciplined, and fiercely loyal, met the invaders head-on. Exploiting their fractured command, he drove them back toward the Adda River. But the coalition's numbers were vast, and though the French-Italians held the field, the victory was incomplete. Further south, the Neapolitan army, corrupt and ill-led, advanced toward Bologna. They met their fate at Nocera in May 1799. There, Napoleon's artillery tore through their ranks like thunder, and his cavalry finished the rout with cold precision. By June, Naples fell. Its weary citizens, crushed under Bourbon corruption, welcomed Napoleon's promises of reform. His agents fanned rebellion across Sicily, forcing the royal family to flee under British protection to Malta. July 4, 1799. Cagliari finally surrendered. Sardinia was his. The Mediterranean, once a Bourbon lake, now answered to the tricolor of Italy. Yet victory carried its own burdens. Across Piedmont and Naples, royalist diehards and local militias waged bitter guerrilla campaigns, feeding on old rivalries and regional divisions. Italy, for all its triumphs, still bled from within. And in the north, Austria was gathering strength once again. By late 1799, their armies struck Milan, seizing upon France's distractions elsewhere. But Napoleon was far from beaten. In the spring of 1800, he executed a dazzling maneuver, crossing the Apennines, bypassing Austrian strongholds, and seizing Florence. At Parma, he captured the enemy's main supply depot, crippling their logistics. All of it built toward one defining moment, the Battle of Marengo, June 14, 1800. Under a blazing Italian sun, Austrian troops surged forward, threatening to break Napoleon's line. But just as defeat loomed, Duke's relief army crashed into the enemy's flank. The tide turned in an instant. What began as disaster ended in glory. By summer, Milan and Venice were free once more. With Italy united and victorious, Napoleon moved swiftly to consolidate power. In July 1800, he declared himself president of the Italian Republic, ushering in a new era of unity. Meanwhile in Paris, Duke, ever ambitious, aligned with Napoleon's brother Lucien to orchestrate a coup, naming himself first consul of France. The result, Napoleon ruled Italy, Duke ruled France. Two allies, two powers, bound by shared ambition and uneasy trust. Britain, ever watchful, sought to undermine him. They armed rebels in Sardinia and Naples, raided coastal towns, and turned the Mediterranean into a chessboard of intrigue. In response, Napoleon fortified every harbor from Genoa to Taranto, expanded the Italian navy, and envisioned something greater: Mediterranean supremacy. From Rome, his chosen capital, he began shaping Italy not only as a state, but as an idea. He built roads linking Milan, Florence, Naples, and Rome in a vast network rivaling the highways of ancient Rome. In the Eternal City, he restored the Forum and the Palatine Hill, not as ruins to be pitied, but as symbols of rebirth. Museums in Florence and Venice showcased Renaissance masterpieces beside relics of antiquity, uniting Italy's past glories with its revolutionary present. For the first time in centuries, Lombards, Venetians, Tuscans, and Neapolitans began to see themselves not as subjects of foreign crowns, but as citizens of one nation, heirs to an imperial legacy. But Napoleon's gaze extended beyond Italy's shores. He dreamed of making the Mediterranean Mare Nostrum once again, our sea, through the conquest of Tunis and Tripolitania. Yet before that dream could unfold, a new war erupted. The Third Coalition rose in 1805, Austria, Russia, and Britain once more seeking to crush the revolutionary powers. Austrian forces fortified the Alpine passes where Napoleon had once triumphed. Rather than fight them head-on, he turned east. Deploying his Italian navy from Venice, he ferried 20,000 men across the Adriatic to Ragusa. There, he won over Croatian leaders with promises of autonomy within a federated Italian realm. In October 1805, his army struck at Kotor and crushed Austrian resistance at the Battle of Knen. Italian troops surged north, capturing Udine, while Franco-Italian divisions advanced toward Fiume, Zagreb, and Vienna itself.
Then, in December, the campaign reached its crescendo, the Battle of Brunno, a triumph as complete and dazzling as Austerlitz. The Peace of Pressburg followed, ceding Tyrol, Dalmatia, and parts of Poland to Italy. Austria was humbled, boxed in, stripped of its power. Only Trieste remained beyond Napoleon's grasp, a bitter reminder of how close total victory had come. When he returned to Rome, the moment demanded ceremony. Inside the echoing vaults of St. Peter's Basilica, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the Italians, by the grace of God and the constitutions of the Republic. On his brow he placed a golden laurel wreath, echoing Augustus and Constantine. Pope Pius VII was present but sidelined, a spectator to history rather than its author. Not everyone celebrated. Duke, now ruling France, grew wary. He saw in Napoleon's coronation not partnership but rivalry. Yet publicly he applauded, waiting for his moment. Britain, too, watched closely, sensing that one day these two men might face each other across a very different battlefield. For now, Napoleon's empire burned bright. He stirred the fires of Balkan liberation, arming Serbs, Croats, and Greeks under the banner of Roman renewal. His fleets clashed with Britain in the Mediterranean, but after Trafalgar, the loss of France's naval power left Italy's coasts exposed. British raids struck Naples and Sardinia, kindling rebellion once again. The War of the Fourth Coalition broke out in 1806. While France marched on Berlin, Napoleon's Italian armies swept through Carinthia and into Vienna with breathtaking speed.
Europe reeled before his advance. By the spring of 1807, he turned against a new target, the crumbling Ottoman Empire. Exploiting rebellion and disorder, his forces stormed through the Balkans, capturing Sarajevo and Belgrade by April, aided by Serbian and Croatian insurgents. By summer, even Durrës had fallen, securing Italy's grip on the Adriatic. The Italian navy, harassed but unbroken, seized Crete, anchoring its dominance over the eastern Mediterranean. But the greatest shock came that May, on the plains near Thessalonica. Ottoman and British-backed artillery met the Franco-Italian forces in a brutal confrontation. Napoleon's refined tactics, perfected over years of war, shattered the Ottoman line. The road to Constantinople lay open. The march was grueling. Ottoman resistance stiffened near Adrianople, but by July, the city itself fell. The capture of Constantinople sent shockwaves through the world. Across Europe, both Catholics and Orthodox Christians hailed him as a savior, an heir to Rome restoring civilization's ancient seat. In the Hagia Sophia, he staged a grand ceremony. There, in the heart of Byzantium, he ordered a Catholic mass led by Father Benedetto Fegna, the Latin Patriarch of Constantinople. To some, it was a symbol of unity, to others, a declaration of domination. Greek, Serbian, and Bulgarian leaders were left stunned. The message was clear. Napoleon's Italy no longer sought merely to rule, it sought to resurrect the empire of Rome itself. The Treaty of Tilsit marked the end of the Fourth Coalition and the beginning of Napoleon's boldest transformation yet, the forging of a new Roman world.
Italy emerged not only victorious but ascendant, annexing Carniola and Croatia from Austria, along with Herzegovina, Epirus, Naxos, Rhodes, and the eastern reaches of Thrace. The Turks were driven from Europe entirely. Constantinople, the ancient queen of cities, was reborn as the eastern jewel of Napoleon's empire. From his throne in Rome, he redrew the map of the Balkans. Montenegro and Serbia were merged into the Kingdom of Dalmatia, ruled by his brother Jerome Bonaparte. Further south, the province of Romagna stretched from Epirus to the Nestos River under Lucien Bonaparte, while Mazia, governed by Louis Bonaparte, absorbed the remaining European lands of the crumbling Ottoman realm. But uniting ancient enemies beneath a single imperial banner came at a price. Croats, Serbs, Greeks, Bulgarians, and Turks,
all with centuries of wounds and pride, were suddenly expected to call themselves Romans. The idea dazzled philosophers, but on the ground it bred resistance. Riots flared in the countryside, old flags reappeared. Yet through it all, Napoleon pressed forward, convinced that the myth of Rome could bind what blood and politics could not. At home, his empire flourished under a wave of cultural rebirth. He revived the ancient Roman office of the aedile, tasking it with organizing magnificent festivals that blended pagan pageantry with Christian celebration. Parades filled the streets of Rome and Florence, spectacles of music, fire, and triumph, reminding the people that they lived not in a mere kingdom, but in a civilization reborn. To populate his new provinces, Napoleon offered land grants across Dalmatia, Thrace, and the Adriatic coast to impoverished Italian farmers. Families from Naples, Tuscany, and Sicily migrated eastward, carrying their language, their faith, and their crafts. Slowly, a Roman-Italian identity began to take root, shaped by shared law and opportunity. In these lands, Christian communities that had suffered under Ottoman rule found new protection, governed by legal codes modeled on Rome's own, structured, impartial, and modern. Yet beneath this shining order lay a delicate balance, especially with the Church. His seizure of the Papal States years earlier still cast a long shadow, but Napoleon, ever the strategist, turned potential enemies into instruments of unity. Restoring Hagia Sophia to Catholic stewardship had been a stroke of political genius, and in 1808, a new concordat with Pope Pius VII sealed the peace between altar and throne. The agreement guaranteed the Church's independence and funded the restoration of St. Peter's Basilica, St. Mark's, the Duomo of Florence, and even Hagia Sophia itself. By appointing Italian bishops to newly established dioceses in the Balkans, Napoleon fused Roman Catholicism with imperial identity. For the first time since the fall of Byzantium, the cross and the eagle once again stood side by side. But the Mediterranean was restless. Egypt rose in rebellion, Persia pressed into Mesopotamia, and Ottoman remnants refused to yield. The endless war drained Italy's treasury. Napoleon's armies clung to the Aegean coast but failed to advance deeper into Anatolia. Ottoman troops, armed with British gold, struck back, pushing his garrisons towards Smyrna. Then fortune shifted. When Britain turned its gaze westward to confront France's invasion of Portugal, Napoleon seized the moment. In 1808, he drove the Ottomans back and dictated peace, one that would allow him to turn to a new frontier, North Africa. That summer, an Italian expedition landed in Tunis. 15,000 soldiers took the city in weeks. The Bey, Ibn Ali bin Thani, accepted Italian suzerainty in exchange for local rule, a pragmatic deal that spared bloodshed. By August, Tripoli too had fallen, and thousands of European captives were freed from Barbary slavery. Across Europe, church bells rang in celebration. But beyond Tripoli, the desert swallowed his ambitions. The Sufi orders of the Sahara resisted fiercely, teaching the empire a familiar lesson: conquest had limits. When Napoleon returned to Rome, he decided to mark his victories with grandeur worthy of legend. At St. Peter's Basilica, 3 years after his first imperial coronation, another ceremony took place. But this time, it was Pope Pius VII, not Napoleon himself, who placed the crown upon the emperor's head. The new title stunned Europe. Dominus Napoleon Caesar Felix Invictus Augustaniae. Our Lord Napoleon Caesar, blessed, unconquered, and august, Emperor of the Romans, by the grace of God and the constitutions of the Republic. But beyond Tripoli, the desert swallowed his ambitions. The Sufi orders of the Sahara resisted fiercely, teaching the empire a familiar lesson: conquest had limits. When Napoleon returned to Rome, he decided to mark his victories with grandeur worthy of legend. At St. Peter's Basilica, 3 years after his first imperial coronation, another ceremony took place. But this time, it was Pope Pius VII, not Napoleon himself, who placed the crown upon the emperor's head. The new title stunned Europe. Dominus Napoleon Caesar Felix Invictus Augustaniae. Our Lord Napoleon Caesar, blessed, unconquered, and august, Emperor of the Romans, by the grace of God and the constitutions of the Republic. This was no longer the title of a mere emperor of the French or Italians. It was the rebirth of Imperator Romanorum. Across Europe, monarchs seethed.
Francis II, the last Holy Roman Emperor, descendant of Charlemagne himself, was livid. 2 years earlier, he had dissolved his ancient empire. Now, a Corsican outsider had stolen Rome itself, crowned in its Basilica, declared by the Pope as the true heir to Caesar. Under Napoleon's decree, his brother's realms were reorganized into formal provinces of the new empire. Yet Louis Bonaparte, the most able and beloved of them, was given an exalted title, Caesar Lucianus Pius Felix Nobilissimus Princeps Juventutis Imperator Designatus. Ruling from Athens, he was named heir to the imperial throne, the junior Augustus of a restored dual empire. Athens, once a ruin of memory, became a construction site of destiny. Napoleon poured treasure into rebuilding the Acropolis into a palace of marble and gold, the Palatium Novum. Artisans from Florence, engineers from Milan, and sculptors from Rome transformed the ancient citadel into a symbol of Western rebirth. Rome and Athens, two lungs breathing the same imperial dream. But even as his marble empire rose, war once again threatened its foundation. In 1809, the War of the Fifth Coalition shattered the fragile peace. Austria struck at France, and for the first time, the Franco-Roman alliance cracked. Napoleon declared neutrality, securing Austria's recognition of his empire, but not of his Roman title. To cement the peace, he wed Archduchess Maria Louisa, daughter of the Austrian emperor, a masterstroke of diplomacy that gave his dynasty blood ties to Europe's oldest crowns. As France bled at Aspern and triumphed at Wagram, Rome prospered. Scientists and artists fleeing Germany's turmoil found refuge in Florence and Milan, sparking another wave of invention and art. Meanwhile, Roman legions crossed the sands of North Africa, capturing Annava, the birthplace of St. Augustine. The empire expanded, and the legend grew. By 1811, even Britain had bowed to pragmatism. A peace treaty recognized Napoleon's Roman titles and borders, hoping to use him as a counterweight against France. The result was outrage in Paris. Napoleon's former allies turned against him. France massed 60,000 men in Bavaria and Saxony under the pretense of confronting Austria, but their true target was Rome. In July, they stormed the Alpine passes, descending toward Trento. But Napoleon was ready. With 40,000 veterans, he struck at Aosta, annihilating a French corps. Duke's armies fought like demons, capturing Turin at terrible cost. In September came the climactic Battle of Aquila, 200,000 men locked in carnage that eclipsed even Leipzig. The thunder of cannons shook the Apennines. 50,000 fell on each side, the rivers running red. When night came, it was the French who retreated, their spirit broken by Roman resolve. October brought the final blow. At Villafranca, Napoleon's army encircled the retreating French and shattered them utterly. 10,000 prisoners were taken. The Alps were secured. By 1812, France was collapsing under the weight of its enemies. Rome, Austria, Prussia, and Britain united against it. The Bourbons returned to Paris, and as part of the peace, ceded all territories east of their borders, including Corsica. For Napoleon, it was poetic justice. The island that had once rejected him was now free, finally part of the empire he had built. But peace never lasts. The Ottomans, seizing France's downfall as an opportunity, surged back into the Balkans, threatening Constantinople. By winter's end, Roman and Bulgarian forces counterattacked, driving them once more beyond the Bosporus. Then came 1814, the year of reckoning. With Europe exhausted and Britain now fearing Russia's growing might, Napoleon launched his final campaign. Across Anatolia, his army swept like wildfire. At the Battle of Bursa, his artillery shattered the Janissaries. By December, Italian banners flew above Ankara. Cyprus fell after a swift naval strike, and Roman legions marched through Lebanon to the gates of Jerusalem. Christian towns greeted them with tears and celebration, seeing in their standards the return of ancient deliverance. When Jerusalem fell, Napoleon entered the city in triumph. In the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, he knelt in silence before the altar, claiming not divinity, but destiny fulfilled. The Treaty of Valletta ended the war. Vast territories across Anatolia and the Levant were annexed, settled by Armenian and Greek refugees who had fled Ottoman persecution. Persia, content with Mesopotamia, acknowledged the empire's new frontiers. In Rome, the emperor returned in glory. A new arch of triumph, the Arco Triunfo Romano, rose above the Via Sacra. Beneath the eternal sun, Napoleon rode through cheering crowds, laurel crown gleaming, his name now etched beside those of Caesar, Trajan, and Constantine. At last, the Corsican who had dreamed of empire stood as Napoleon Caesar, emperor of the Romans, ruler of 2 continents, master of the sea that had once divided them. And with that, history closed the curtain on an age of kings and opened a legend that would echo forever.